Hey, what's up guys? This is Ace here. Got a cool video for you today. This one's going to be my first non-racing game video for my channel. And this one's going to be for the Garfield fans. You know, I myself, I'm a huge Garfield fan. But, question is, what are some good Garfield games out there? But, we are in luck. There's a few good Garfield games out there, but there's also a lot of bad. So, let's get started with the console releases for Garfield, starting with the PS2. First off is Garfield, A Tale of Two Kitties. That's a movie-based game. The movie sucks, the game sucks. Then we have just a self-titled Garfield game. Now that was only released for Europe, and well, we're not missing much because the game's ratings were just terrible. It doesn't really look that great either. Then there is Garfield Saving Arlene. Now I'm not even sure of whether this game has ever been released. I can't find anything to say that it was, but also can't find any information to say that it was canceled. So if anyone has any info on that game, definitely shoot me out an email. I'm definitely curious to know. And lastly, here's Garfield Lasagna World Tour. Now this was actually released for North America. It's a really cheap budget game, and let me just say it really is cheap. I bought it off eBay. I was pretty excited when I saw, it's just awesome, a Garfield game for the PS2, finally. Let's just say when I got it, well, I was pretty, disgusted is a pretty good way to describe it. The game was just a downright awful piece of shit. I mean, the graphics were terrible, the gameplay was terrible, the voice acting was terrible. Even the artwork for the case, it looked like it came out of pretty much a cheap color printer. It's like, good lord. It's just an awful, awful game. I'd probably have to say, if someone were to ask me what's the worst game I ever played or owned, it'd definitely be Garfield Lasagna World Tour. I mean, you see the reviews like on eBay and Amazon.com for it. They're generally good, but these are parents buying the game for their kids, so they could care less how much the game sucks. So, unfortunately, no good games for the PS2, but there is one really great Garfield game for the consoles, and we're going to have to go back to 1995 to the Sega Genesis, and that game happens to be Garfield Caught in the Act. Now, what makes this game really special is Jim Davis. We all know the creator of Garfield. He's the one who created the computer graphics in this game, so you definitely know you're going to get a really great game, and yeah, it definitely is a really great game. It's very cartoony. It's a very solid, very well made platformer game. I mean, if you're just looking to add a platformer for your Genesis collection, you definitely want to pick this game up. It's not something that'll cost you a lot of money either. It's an easy to find game. If you're just looking, if you don't really care if it's complete, just the cartridge itself is just a few bucks. Small shipping price too, but if you're looking for something complete, now complete for this game doesn't mean case, cartridge, and instruction booklet. There's a fourth item, and I'll show you guys. You have here, it's a little black and white Garfield comic book. You don't really see a lot of copies of this game that have it. Probably most of them, the previous owner holds on to them, it gets lost, or just gets ruined. So it's definitely, it's something cool. Generally like one that includes the little book. Probably expect to pay about $15 for it. That's how much I paid for mine. But if you don't have this, if you don't have a Sega Genesis, but you have a Game Gear, this game was also released on the Game Gear. So that's pretty much the Garfield games for the consoles. Let's move over to the handhelds, starting with the DS. It's like the PS2, the DS also had a version of Garfield, A Tale of Two Kitties, and of course, it sucks. And there's also Garfield Gets Real. So it's also supposed to be released on the Wii. It hasn't been released. I'm not sure if it will ever be released or if it's been canceled. It's another one which you just don't really find any information on it. But it doesn't really look like something that we're going to be missing a whole lot, And lastly, there's also Garfield's Fun Fest. Now this is actually the latest Garfield game to be released, period, and it looks terrible. I've seen this game, at stores for like $10 to $20. It's not even worth that, really. But there is one really good Garfield game for the DS, and that happens to be Garfield's Nightmare. Now, this is actually, surprisingly, a budget title. You can buy this brand new for $20. It's a very solid, very well made game, nice music, it's very cartoony. If you're just looking for a nice solid platformer for your DS, this is definitely worth the pickup. I haven't gotten too far in this one or any of my other Garfield games because, well, the reality is I really suck at platforming games. I still have a lot of practice to do to get better, but it's definitely worth a pickup. And lastly, let's move on to the Game Boy Advance. Now, there's 2 Garfield games released for it, and the first one is Garfield and His 9 Lives. This game's sort of in between. It's not really good, but it's not really as terrible as some of those other Garfield games I discussed. If you can pick this one up for less than $10, it'd probably be worth it. I have not seen one less than $10 on eBay yet, and it's probably not worth paying more than $10 for it, just not really all that great. But moving on to the other Garfield game for the GBA. That happens to be Garfield: The Search for Pookie. Now, I first found out about that game, a few years back when I was just browsing through the local EB game stores. Saw it and like, wow, definitely got to pick this one up. It's actually a pretty nice, really solid platforming game, cartoony. It's got nice music. It's definitely another really solid platformer to pick up for your Game Boy Advance game library. Probably one you can pick up for less than $20 on eBay, so definitely not spending too much for a really good game. But that pretty much is my video for Garfield games, good and bad. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week.